Hello everyone, and welcome to SpiritMonkey. I'm your host Francois, and on today's episode I will be discussing sigils. What they are, how they work, how to create them, and then consequently use them for your magical practice. So, let's get right into it. So what is a sigil? A sigil can be defined as a basic pictorial representation of a more complex concept or entity. Now, sigils can be divided into two main categories, as it is explained in the Llewellyn Complete Book of Psychic Empowerment. Now, these are traditional and modern sigils. Traditional sigils are passed down from teacher to pupil in conventional magic systems. Here, each sigil is a specific representation, key or name of an entity, and is consequently used to contact the applicable entity. While modern sigil magic, on the other hand, which is primarily inspired by a great occultist by the name of Austin Osman Spare, and which is frequently used by modern Chaos Magicians, is more concerned with the creation of one's own sigil, with a meaning or understanding thereof unique to its creator. In the modern system, the sigils do not represent certain entities for the most part, but instead represent energies, desires, concepts, or objects that the creator of the sigil wishes to represent. It can also be said that traditional sigils are used to invoke an entity or force, thus remaining separate from the user itself, while modern sigils are used to invoke energies into oneself, which creates a direct link between the force and the inner self of the individual. Now, of course, people can also invoke certain entities, but that is a completely different topic, and for the purpose of this video, is not really applicable at the moment. So, let's get back to actually crafting the sigils. Now, crafting and using a sigil can be divided into the four following main sections. I also list the basic requirements of each step according to the great occultist Frater Yudi in his book High Magic. Now, first there'll be a statement of intent. This statement has to be clear and precise in its wording. Step 2 will be designing the sigil, and by designing it you're gonna abstract it and disguise it so that it doesn't blatantly represent what you are trying to create out of it. Now, charging the sigil is number 3, which can be either trance-like or spasmodic, meaning you can either enter a clear empty state of mind through something like meditation or hypnosis, while the spasmodic way is by building the energy through something else like, for example, dancing or using sexual magic. The fourth step will be banishing and forgetting the sigil. Now, by banishing or forgetting the sigil, the act can either be energetic or, again, with an empty state of mind, by trying to energetically distract yourself from the sigil you've created and charged, or by completely emptying your mind so that you don't think of anything at all. But with that said, let's look at how exactly does one create a sigil. Now, there are quite a couple of ways in which one can create a sigil. This video will discuss the primary 3 methods as described by Peter J. Carroll. Now, Carroll is mostly known for his books including Liber Null and Psychonaut, Liber Chaos, and a couple of other Chaos Magick publications, including Practical Sigil Magick. Now, this section covers the creation of a sigil. Later in the video, I will discuss how we use the sigil in a magical practice, how to charge and then banish one. But for now, let's look at the creation of the sigil itself. Now there are three methods that Carroll described, which are called the word, pictorial, and mantrical methods of sigil craft. So let's look at method 1, the word sigil. Now a word sigil in basic terms is an altered sentence or statement of intent, where certain letters are eliminated from the whole sentence, and each letter in the sentence is rearranged to form a sort of picture or sigil. Now the statement of intent must be as precise and to the point as possible. Try and use a shorter sentence rather than a longer one, similar to an affirmation. So for this example, my statement of intent is, it is my will to astral travel often. I find that this is something a lot of people are interested in, so maybe you can use this example in the future. Now, eliminate all the letters that repeat in the sentence. If we do this here, we will end up with the following letters: I, T, S, M, Y, W, O, A, R, F, and N. Now, some practitioners also prefer to drop the vowels, but for this example, we'll keep them. Now, once you have the base letters, it is time to start arranging them to create an image to your liking. The aim of this procedure is to obscure and disguise the letters and to make the statement of intent unrecognizable to the eye. Now you, however, will know what it means. Now in these examples, you can see how I systematically started adding the letters and twisting them so that they are a bit more unrecognizable. Now also some of the letters are very similar in shape and design, which means that you don't have to add every letter. If there's already something that can represent the letter in the sigil, you can scratch the letter and simply use that. Still, you will have the meaning and it will become continually unrecognizable. Now here in the final sigil, you can see that I enclosed it in a circle and then extended some of the lines. Now I extended some of the lines to make it further unrecognizable and to just be a bit more pleasing to the eye when I encircle it. Now the reason people close off the sigil, whether it is a circle, a triangle, a square, or whatever shape you prefer, it is basically to close off the sigil to represent it as a single figure, closed off from the rest of the universe. In that way, it also represents a finality or completion of the sigil. And when one then transfers it into the subconscious mind, it is easier for the subconscious mind to see it as a single closed off representation of a concept or entity or whatever you wish. Next, let's go to method 2, which is a pictorial sigil. Now a pictorial sigil, unlike a word sigil, is a simplified yet pleasing representation of a greater or more complex image, not a sentence but an image or idea. The pictorial sigil will not make use of any letters or statements, but rather what the image itself represents. For this example, I have created a sigil to represent the empowerment of the third eye, since that one is also quite popular. Now, in this first image, I have created a dot to represent the third eye itself, while the cross below represents the standard eyes, or where the bridge of the nose starts. Thus, the dot above is more clearly represented as being the third eye in relation to the brow or the normal eyes. Now continuing on to the second image, the lines and upward facing triangle is an abstract representation of energy flowing upward. In this case, channeling energy upward through the chakras or energy system of the body into the third eye with each breath, thus symbolizing its empowerment or how it gains energy. Now here in the third and final image, the wave-like lines represent the unfoldment of a flower. This symbolizes opening or blooming of the third eye to become something beautiful, empowered, and of course, wide open. Please note that this is simply imagery that resonates with my individuality. You are free to represent it however you feel is most effective or suited to your personal psyche, spirit, or kind of the field of occult you've been using up until now. Now to me, that is the beauty of a pictorial sigil, in that it can be altered and played with quite as you wish. The image and its detail is unique to your way of understanding it, and therefore is catered to your personal style of art, creation, and symbolism that you choose to use. Again, with the pictorial sigil, the final product should be something that is more obscure and not blatantly something that you wish to represent. This way, again, it is something for your subconscious mind to cling on to. And since you, again, know its personal or proper meaning, none of the meaning is lost in its simplicity. Now, getting into method 3, the Mantrical method. The Mantrical method, also mentioned by Carroll, is not a sigil in the typical sense, as it does not create an image. However, I thought it worth mentioning nonetheless, as it may be useful to some of you that choose to use it. In essence, with this method, you create a mantra instead of a sigil. Now, this method starts in a similar fashion as the word method, so one creates or chooses a statement of intent in the form of a sentence. Again, the double letters are removed from the sentence, and one may also continue to remove unwanted letters as one pleases. But in general, keep this to a minimum. Now, with this method, one must not remove the vowels, as it is optional in the word sigil, but not in the mantrical. If there are multiples of the same vowel, you may remove them, but not all the vowels, because you'll need them to create the mantra. Now, once you've refined your sentence to get the letters of your liking, it is time to start jumbling them around to form completely new words, just like if one created an anagram. For this example, my statement is, I remember my dreams when waking up. Now, when I process that sentence, I end up with the following letters: I, R-E-M-B-Y, D-A-S-W-H-N, K-G-U-N-P. Now, this is where the more difficult part comes in trying to find a word or a couple of words that you can formulate with these letters. In this example, I ended up with the following little silly sounding statement: Rimbi Sedap Kun. Now, this basic sentence or anagram has no meaning in itself, but like the other sigils, you do understand its true meaning. The words themselves continue to carry the statement of your intent, both consciously and subconsciously. Now, this sentence has become a mantra, which can be repeated over and over and over again, just as other mantras would. It carries with it the meaning that you originally intended, and when you repeat it, you can continue to repeat it into a trance-like state, which then solidifies the intent within the subconscious mind. Now, if you wish, you can combine this mantra with whatever other sigil you created, as long as the subconscious meaning is still the same to you. But with that said, let's focus on the pictorial sigils, and especially how does one use the sigil and charge it and banish it. So let's continue. So far I have explained points 1 and 2, which is the statement of intent and then sigil design. Now let's have a look at step 3 and 4, which is charging the sigil and then banishing the sigil. Now, in the words of Frater himself, a sigil is charged by implanting it into the subconscious mind. He also states that charging a sigil in this case is not the same as enchanting or charging a talisman, amulet or some other item. Instead, the charging of a sigil can be compared to storing it as data within the subconscious mind. In a way, you try to solidify the sigil in the back of your mind so that from there it can affect your conscious mind. Now, there are quite a couple of ways in which one can charge a sigil. In fact, the ways are almost too diverse to mention all of them here. I do advise that you go read up a bit more about the different techniques and then find one which is to your liking. If you wish, I have a video called the Eightfold Path to the Center, which outlines 8 ways in which people enter a sort of magical trance or excited state. And this is according to Gerald Gardner, who is called the Resurrectionist or father of modern Wicca or witchcraft. Now, like I have said, the way in which the magical community charges and banishes a sigil is very diverse. Many of the methods are similar to methods used in conventional magic, as the act of building energy and releasing it or firing it off can be used to power the sigil. This is where some background and practice of magical energy manipulation is advised, but even if you're a novice, don't be afraid, just go ahead. Now, the act of charging a sigil, as previously mentioned, can be spasmodic or trance-like. What Frater means by this is that in order to create a focus on the sigil, alongside the visualization of energy entering the sigil, an excited or entranced state needs to be achieved mentally. Now, these two states, spasmodic and trance-like, are simply two opposite ways of delivering the same result, depending on what you focus on. For example, the excited state may refer to forms of movement, gestures, and especially dance. Now, the normal trance-like state refers more to the typical meditative or hypnotic state of mind, where the mind and body is completely still. With both methods, a single focus is kept in mind in order to charge the sigil. After the initial buildup of energy, or focus and consequent release of the energy, many argue that the sigil must be banished from waking consciousness or thought. Now, some practitioners go so far as to state that the entire meaning of the sigil must be forgotten. Now, this is more easily said than done for a lot of people, but with practice, it can be achieved. Now, not all practitioners agree with this statement. However, most of the work you will find on Sigil Magick will advise this forgetting or banishing step. The reason why this is done is so that the conscious mind lets go of the image and its meaning, in order to not attribute any other qualities, fears, or other energy into the sigil. Thus, it can safely begin to work unhindered within the subconscious mind and deliver the actual intent that you created it for. Now, like I've said, there are very many ways of charging a sigil, and I advise you to go read further to find and tweak the method to your liking. If you have a magical journal, remember to document the process so as to measure the result for the future. Since a part of this exercise is to forget the sigil, cover the pages in your journal temporarily so as not to bring the details of the sigil back to consciousness once the exercise is completed. Now let me provide you with a basic exercise that you can use to charge the sigil. This exercise is similar to a lot of the ones you'll see when exploring Sigil Magick. However, they are quite diverse as I've stated before, and please adapt it to your liking. So first, let's sit comfortably on the ground or at a desk with the sigil in clear view right in front of you. Now there are 7 steps to this exercise, and step 1 will be to link with the sigil. So what you do is simply stare into the sigil until you feel that you can clearly visualize it with your eyes closed. I recommend doing this for at least 2 minutes until the sigil is completely ingrained in your conscious thought. Then close your eyes and strongly visualize the sigil. Now if you can clearly visualize the sigil in front of you, you can move on to step 2. Now with step 2, you enter an applicable state of mind. For this practice, we will use the trance-like state instead of a spasmodic state. So start relaxing and enter a trance state through whatever means suits you or that you are comfortable with using, such as meditation, hypnosis, or whatever else you've been using that's been working for you. Now take your time with this step until you are satisfied with the trance-like state. While doing this, you don't have to visualize the sigil, but instead focus on getting yourself in that proper state of mind. Now, depending on your magical aptitude in entering these states, the time it will take is varied. For the advanced practitioner, it can be quick, over in a couple of minutes or less even. While for the novice or amateur, it may take anything from 15 minutes to more than an hour. Once you are satisfied and think you are in this state, you can move on to step 3, where again you will bring the sigil to your mind's eye and visualize it strongly. So step 3 is building the energy. In this trance state, one then begins to visualize energy flowing around and into the sigil. Keep building this energy until you are satisfied that it is enough or at its peak. Now, the energy has only been built up until this point and has not yet been activated. This can be done in the next step. To get back to the visualization, it can be whatever suits the user. For example, the energy might be seen as a translucent flame entering and surrounding the sigil, that when it will be activated in the next step, bursts into a bright, powerful flame that becomes part of the sigil. Again, use whatever imagery or visualization suits you. Now moving on to step 4, releasing and activating the sigil. So once you are satisfied with the amount of energy built around or into the sigil, visualize the sigil being imbued or merging with that energy. And like stated before, this depends on the visualization preferences of the user. This charging of the sigil is usually a quick burst or activation, as the energy has already been gathered and is simply being absorbed or transferred into the sigil itself. This may only take a couple of seconds, but once activated, keep the sigil in the mind's eye for a moment to reflect upon its meaning and, of course, to feel its power that you just imbued into it. So now it's time to quickly move on to step 5, which is banishing or forgetting the sigil. Now that the sigil is fully charged and activated, it is time to let it go. While still visualizing the completed sigil, start visualizing it disappearing into your subconscious mind, however you would like to visualize it. Perhaps you visualize it as simply going invisible, or perhaps you see it descending into a lake, representing your subconscious mind. It's all up to you. Now simply let it fade. This is not always an easy step, as concentration has gone into its visualization in the previous steps. Nevertheless, try to let it move away from your conscious thought for a moment until it is faded into the background of your mind. As mentioned before, the reason for this is to avoid affecting the sigil with cluttered thought. Thus, try to distract your mind and think of something completely else. Or, if you like, try to go into a deep state where you completely clear your mind of anything, as to not allow the sigil to come back to the forefront of your mind. Now, once your mind is clear of the sigil, whether you did it through some form of deeper meditation of clearing your mind, or simply distracting your mind by getting up and doing something else and thinking about something else, it is time to move to the next step, which is destroying the sigil. Now, to many practitioners, this step is not necessary, however, most do recommend it. Destroy the drawing. This can be done in any way that you feel comfortable. For example, you can burn it, you can bury it, you can let it go in the ocean, or you can let the wind carry it away. It is all up to you. In this step, try to diverge the mind away from the sigil and its meaning, and over time this will become much easier. Every time the sigil or image pops back into your mind, purposefully try and distract yourself with something else. Immediately try and force yourself to think about something completely different. Now we get to the final step, step 7, which is keeping track of the results. After an appropriate set of time, when you feel that the sigil has either worked, failed, or created some sort of unexpected result, record it in your magical journal. With that, we've completely ended the exercise. Obviously, the more you do this and the more you adapt it to your liking, the better you'll get at it. And especially if you want to use different forms of spasmodic and trance-like states or means of achieving it, feel free and experiment with it, and make sure to document what you get out of it. So to conclude this video, let's quickly have a look at the formula again. First is the statement of intent, which is clear and precise in its wording. Second, we design the sigil and try and abstract it and disguise its true meaning. Step 3, we charge the sigil, whether we want to use a spasmodic or trance-like state. And the final step, banishing and forgetting the sigil, with an energetic or an empty state of mind, and you complete this by destroying the sigil. Now, with all that said, you have a basic understanding of sigilcraft and an effective way of using it. I advise anyone interested in Sigil Magick to read up as much as possible and practice it regularly. Personally, I find Sigil Magick to be very effective and very fun in the way that we design it. And it's also a good way to improve your own magical capability, since it first requires you to formulate clear and concise statements of intent. Also, the creative process is fun and improves your own intuition by trying to create a sigil and play around with it and abstract it. Also, when charging the sigil, you use both visualization and try and enter an altered state of consciousness, which is two very powerful things when it comes to using magical capability. Now, with all that said, I hope this video helped you guys, and hopefully you can now go and start playing around with creating sigils and using them in your craft. But until next time, keep well, guys. This is SpiritMonkey, out. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, please click like and subscribe. Also check out our main webpage, spiritmonkey.me, for a lot more interesting articles and links to all the other pages. And also check out our Patreon page. If you feel like giving $1, please do. It's all appreciated. Other than that, have an awesome day. Cheers.